I think in each of the groups, some talked about this a little bit more, but I think we'd open it up to the faculty presenters, questions in the chat. I think there's, we do have some capacity on campus, and Jan began to address it. We have a lab at MLB with a few headsets. We have a large visualization studio up in the Duderstadt Center with about 26 workstations. We're working through the plans of how do we properly social distance that, and Dan Fesahazian could speak more to that as we're planning that out. We're looking more broadly of how do we provide more access to hardware and to content. At the initiative, we're thinking about things in terms of scale, and how do we distribute this? How do we provide the proper access to students in a course or faculty in a course, and resources. So, we're thinking about it from that, but I think this is even a broader topic around accessibility and equity for students and DEI components. And so I think it's a broad discussion that we'd like to have for maybe the next 10, 15 minutes, and then we'll wrap up.
Can I throw something in there, Jeremy?
Yeah, please.
Digital studies is in a very small space on Mason, but we bought every platform. And so if you want to use it by yourself and not be embarrassed, you can come by, because it will be private. And it is a little mortifying when you feel like you're in a big exposed space, which Duderstadt is, or in a classroom where anybody might, exactly, and people are looking at you. So I think that was part of our thinking, was to just get every VR platform, the Vive, the Oculus, the Quest, and all that, so that faculty could try it out in a more kind of safe and, smaller setting. So people are welcome when and if we're back.
I have no idea why I neglected to mention DSI. I apologize for that. I installed a lot of that stuff, so I should.
Yeah, and there's some interesting technologies out there that I know we were exploring on North Campus called CleanBox, which is a device that you can put a headset in that'll run for about a minute and kill off any virus, including corona. They're not cheap, but something like that is going to be critical, protocols in place.
I can say our equipment is pristine because it's never been used. So like for now, it's probably the most safe equipment on campus.
I've got 2 Quests in a box sitting here on my floor that are nothing open. Well, just from the broader group, in terms of the participants, the other faculty, love to hear just kind of your concerns, ideas we may have on how to address this. We talked about it in our group, there's a supply chain issue right now. A lot of these devices are being produced in China, and getting access to them and getting them shipped is a challenge. Oculus is, so one of the largest platform makers for VR is Oculus, owned by Facebook, and they've been sold out for months. And there was a window of last month for about 20 minutes where they were on sale. I was able to get to, and then they were sold out again. So I think they're trying to ramp up production, but there's a whole other set of ethical discussion around Facebook and the data collection and what can be done there, and how broadly do we support devices like that versus more, there's other devices that provide similar level of technical capabilities, but not the same amount of content. So there's a whole Oculus store and a lot of content being built for it, and major production firms building to that place. And so there's just some of the discussion we want to have and think about, and open up with you all.
So Jeremy, I'm really glad that you brought that up, because on the front end of my work in VR, I wasn't even aware how huge a problem protecting the privacy and the kind of identities and data of our students would turn out to be. And that is, if it's, we're serious about thinking about that, again, as Michelle said, it's not just about tripping on cords. What happens with the record of their use, of their experience, biometric data collection, all of that, that also needs to be built in. I mean, we sort of, as a community, as a campus community, should have sort of at least a top level protocol or set of discussions around, what's okay. None of these products are purpose built for an educational community or for educational purposes. We are kind of the sore thumb that sticks out, which gives us a lot of opportunity and a lot of space for critical thinking, but it can make a lot of these choices so much more complicated. So I do think this is a great moment, especially given the urge that everyone feels to think about how to close distances, institutionally, culturally, socially, pedagogically. What would our sort of sense of best practices look like? Like, what would we most want to commit to protecting student experience and privacy, and their ability to enter into these kinds of experiences without having to worry about implications they can't even see?
Maybe one example I could share is, it's a little bit more from the technological side, but so when the whole COVID-19 thing happened, what do you do in an AR VR course? You do AR, not VR anymore, because access to VR equipment is a big issue, but most students have actually phones that are capable of AR experiences. And so we did this move. And so it is relatively easy. If you choose the right technology at the lower platform level, you can relatively quickly switch. Some experiences might be completely designed for VR. So there's like the Uncle Tom cabin that we saw earlier. I think that would probably not work at all in AR. So I just find our solution was to move to AR, but as I get ready for the fall semester, I really need to think about how do I get equipment potentially to students? Could we even purchase headsets, maybe in some smaller amount? Where do we have equipment on campus that hopefully was never opened and could still be shared or something? So I was just like, and the last thing, maybe coming back, that was actually what I wanted to say in response to the conversation that Sarah kicked off. Jeremy and I have been discussing maybe an app, an AR app, like something that is Michigan approved and controlled for us to roll out new AR content in classrooms where not every instructor has by themselves to think about all the issues they have to think about, and whether that's, so it would solve some deployment issues, maybe issues of trust that students might have if we have an XR initiative controlled app or something, or maybe some of our IT support services will look more into this. But it could, like, we should think of ways to coordinate our efforts more rather than, we've all been exploring in our own little dimensions, which is great. Could we focus some of this activity and bring some of the effort together is my big question. And the XR initiative, or I don't actually know who's the right entity for that. But.
I think that's a good point. And I was thinking the same thing, because what happens in a symposium like today, we've had really great questions from people. We've had people doing the work, sharing their experiences. We have, quite a bit of community knowledge now that we're building up. And how do we kind of put all this together in a way that we start to create a bank of answers and questions and experiences and ideas? How do we sort of start to capture and put that out in a way that others can contribute and query this knowledge bank that we start to accumulate? I think that's always a challenge in creating a community like this, but I think it's worth considering. And can the XR initiative be the hub for putting together this knowledge bank? This community of practice.
One of the things that we've been trying to do in engineering is, we've been doing this XR clinic for a couple of years. Actually, it predates Jeremy's clinic by at least a year, maybe a skosh longer. And basically, the idea is that we want to develop tools and democratize these things. And so Talal Alothman, who's on the call, he's actually been hired to work with faculty to like be that connector. So if someone has an idea, I want to figure out how to train students how to use a telescope. That came up in our breakout session. How do we actually do that? So Talal would be the person that'd be like, well, here are your options. We've got commercial equipment that can do this. We have this one particular kind of app that was developed here in Ann Arbor that we acquired called Arthea that will actually allow us to upload three-dimensional files, and you can do some simple manipulation and annotation and so forth. So I think, building more of those connections, and I know that Jeremy is acting in a similar kind of regard, as being kind of like that glue between the instructor and their idea and the technology, because we can't all be experts in all of it. It's just impossible.
I
Yeah,
agree.
and-
I think that the curation is vital, because when people are desperate and prepping a class, they'll just use any old thing that's available. So I was teaching using
And fast.
Etherpad and fast, right? So Etherpad worked for a while and then it went away, as did all the conversations we had. So if the university could go in and kind of curate, that was something our group wanted to know. Like, it would help us so much if there was a resources page, whether they were native or just things that were approved or could be supported, because otherwise people will roll their own. It's a tradition in ed tech, but it doesn't always go well, as Chris knows from experience, I'm sure.
I think that's
And I think, we do have these pockets of on campus doing things. So, the clinics Joanna just mentioned, and Jan's work at LSNA, and ITS is doing stuff, and School of Ed, we can be a resource for assessment types of issues and educational design. There's all these pockets, and it's just having the hub that is like the glue between the communications layer and the glue between all of these pieces. That would be great.
No, I think it's.
I agree with that, and I would, for the immediate short term, I would set the bar even lower. Just someone who could create the kind of prototype for that resource map.
Yeah.
In a way that makes it really accessible. It's a lot of work, but a lot of us, different places on campus have, hunted and pecked and struggled and found and all of that. I agree with Lisa 100%. Just putting that in one place where instructors on the ground could find it would be a huge service.
Well, I think we have a new task. Happy to take that on as part of the initiative to at least bring together the groups. I mean, I don't want it to be a funnel where we're the only place you can go. I don't. That's not the type of. But I want to be a resource to help point and collaborate and bring.
It should be crowdsourced. Like in my own experience, I've started so many lists. You and I have worked on lists. We can share. Maintaining them is really the world is moving so quickly. It's really hard. I'm thinking more like a forum where people can share their experience. Tried this tool, didn't work in my class, sucked.
We could build the infrastructure for people to start. Adding on to that. IBA.
Jace Masters and I created a proposal for a platform to do exactly this, broad spectrum across the University of Michigan. And Ryan has access to a copy of it in AI. And we had a big cross-campus team, part of developing the proposal. Happy to talk with you more later.
Perfect. That would be perfect. And I think not to have left you out, Matthew. One of the large projects that we did this semester was with Matthew Solomon and film and TV studies with Citizen Kane VR, and that was deployed right before everybody was sent home. But I think as a follow-up talk this summer or symposium, we'll want to share that and hear more about that. So, well, I think in terms of I don't know if there's more. I mean, we could probably have a whole session on accessibility and equity. More thoughts or more questions before we move into kind of next?
Just that we haven't talked a lot about accessibility, as in, people with special needs or some kinds of impairments. And it is really a big issue. And there are some tools that we are exploring, but it's like, it almost needs a more focused effort. As an instructor, it's really hard to build an XR into your course and also think about opt-in, opt-out, all kinds of alternatives, making sure it works for everybody. We don't have those services yet. I mean, we have video transcription, but that's it roughly. Well,
that's what I was thinking with Matthew's project. There was a VR experience, but there was also a desktop, more accessible. I mean, if you have visual impairment, probably all of it's harder, but Matthew, I don't know if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about that, or we could do that offline.
No, I'd be happy to share. I think the big takeaways for me were the possibilities for collaborative learning and this idea that while in a space together physically, students have a qualitatively different experience. So how that's going to play out in the era of social distancing remains unclear. But I think you know, some of us were accustomed to thinking about VR as a single person type of experience. And I think last semester really disabused me of that idea. So I think the challenges that we now face are how do we optimize a kind of collaborative learning experience, given the fact that we're probably not going to be that many of us in the same space.
Yeah, there's some interesting challenges ahead. Thank you for that. I think there'll be more to share soon. I think you're kind of consolidating all the experiences and the feedback and results of the students. So I think I'd like to showcase that at some point this summer.
Yeah, my sense is that the students really responded, you know, as our colleagues have mentioned, the kind of idea that we're in this together, we're breaking new ground, we're trying to figure it out, we don't have it perfect. And I think they really responded to it in that way, on that level. And so I would encourage all my colleagues to, you know, take that leap, because the students definitely responded.
Great. I know we're kind of closing in on our 4 hours. So just really appreciate, I want to thank everyone, all the participants, our XR team and AI team, and the breakout sessions with helping with the mural boards with Eric, Moiso, and Shalanda. All the participants staying with us. In terms of next steps, you know, we're thinking of, you know, perhaps a shorter session, you know, maybe next month or into July around, okay, reviewing some of this content or uses of it or opportunities to move forward. You know, we'll curate all the thoughts from the mural boards and kind of look for common themes to bring together there. Is there interest from this community to participate in something like that? Shorter, yes. Okay, well, great. Well, some of the early feedback is yes. I would maybe leading the witness a little bit there with my question, but we're happy to do that. You know, a couple things I want to mention. The XR initiative is here to, you know, to help provide, you know, consulting support, ideation generation. We've been working closely with Talal and Dan Fesazian's team and all these other resources. So we really want to provide that. If people have ideas, feel free to reach out. I don't know if you can still see the slide because my other monitor turned off. Is it still showing?
Yes.
Okay, so my email address is there. We have an XR newsletter. If you want to subscribe, if you go to ai.umich.edu/XR. We also started an XR podcast last week where we're interviewing a lot of the folks here, people across the university doing interesting work. And I'd love for folks to subscribe to that. You know, we're trying to keep them short, 15 to 30 minutes long, so they're, you know, they're to the point and short, digestible. But yeah, if anyone else wants to add anything before we go, I'll give folks a couple minutes back.
Jeremy started a podcast.
Yes. So it's called Mixer Studios right there, and you can subscribe Apple, Spotify, and Google. The major platforms now.